The long riding had evoked my true essence. It had revealed to me something that I had traded in to be that person we're supposed to be, culturally or pressed to be. I traded that all in. I remember very clearly thinking on my first ride that I felt like I was the young girl. I was on my horse and riding across my father's farm, just like I was a little girl. You know, the way we are before all the shoulds and maybes and we have tos and do this and do that. You know, when our spirits are so free. And I got to touch that for the very first time in my adult life. You know, and I remember thinking that was even remarkable. How many people get to do this? How many people get to go back and feel the way they felt before they were made into somebody that they really didn't want to be? But I gave up an awful lot to go forward. I gave up an awful lot to discover an awful lot. It was an unhealthy relationship I was in with my husband. It was breaking up, coming back together, breaking up. When I pulled away the last time, he said, that's it. He wants a divorce. And I fell apart. You know, I lost all my hair, eyebrows, eyelashes. I was bald. I made a decision. I would not enter a relationship looking like this. I've been living up at the cabin for, 10 years by myself. And it was hard work. It's really hard work. And, I'd go in and teach ballet, and then I'd come home and I was always alone. I wanted a partner. I thought I wanted a partner. But unless you become a really good partner for yourself, going out and finding another partner isn't the answer. You got to learn to be your own best partner. I hadn't learned that yet. I had known this man for many years. He was a very dear person to me, and I had very deep feelings for him. But I could not go there. I could not. It was too humiliating. I knew that if I followed that path, that I would have repeated the same mistakes I'd made in previous relationships, i.e. I'd lose myself, which was why being bald, having alopecia, was such a perfect thing, because it did keep me from going into that relationship. That is when I happened to have this vision. I was out there training these two young colts. These were Tennessee walking horse colts that I was training. In that vision, I saw myself riding. And I saw myself forgetting about the relationship that I could not have. I tried to talk myself out of it. Really, it was like, I had no horse, I had no money. I'd never done it. I'd never been camping with a horse. So I came up with a place to go, and I asked Mac McCurry, who owned the Tennessee Walking Horse Ranch that I trained for, if he would give me a horse. Okay, so I had a horse and a destination. The day I left, I was in tears. Why am I doing this? I rode into a nightmare. I tried to talk myself out of it.
Pride was young and difficult. He had been bought and returned twice because he was almost impossible to ride. Bernice was an experienced horsewoman, but she had never done anything like this ride. She could only bring with her what she could tie to the front and the back of the saddle. She didn't even have a tent. But she did have her beloved dog, Claire.
She literally, from the very first night led me into the darkness. And only because that dog was leading us, that pride rode, followed her wherever she went, one side of the road, the other side of the road. Pitch blackness. That first night out was just pitch blackness. I was, very anxious about it, very nervous about not knowing where I would sleep at night, and if I was going to have any food, if there was any water. I mean, it nearly drove me mad with anxiety, not knowing where I would spend the night. Halfway through the first ride, her feet are sore. She can hardly walk. I've got her feet wrapped in flannel and then in duct tape.
It feels good to know that, just happenstance of, cross paths, that it made a big difference to somebody.
There was a pivotal point in my long riding career. I was so alone. I was so out of my element. I was way over my head.
One of the things you had told me just in our initial meeting there was, I'm riding from the Canadian border to New Mexico to visit my sister. And it's like, holy shit, you need a place to stop on the way.
I was on my knees that night before I came here, sobbing. I can't do this. Why am I doing this? This is so stupid. My head was just full of all this stuff from my past, like all my past failures. And at that point, I had no hair. I had alopecia. I had lost all my hair years ago. So I was also trying to hide that.
It's too bad that Don's not here.
I know.
Because it allowed him to be his best self. He was good at putting you back on the saddle and lining you out, he was living through you a little bit. He had polio and all these other things that were impediments to him being able to get around the way that he would have liked to. I think it was important to him that you finished that journey.
Nothing stopped him, it seemed to.
No.
And Don at no time thought, you're going back. It was, you're going forward. So between him and those words, and you and the food, I was reestablishing my confidence. But I remember when he took me up in that airplane and I saw where I was going to go, I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
That was so intimidating. It was such worthless country to me.
Yeah, right.
It's just like, it's just unforgiving, foreboding country. No. And I'd lay in bed at night thinking, oh, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I would not have become a long rider. I would not have made this, and my life would not have continued on had it not been for you people. It would not have. I would not have made it.
Well, I still have kind of a hard time trying to figure out somebody doing what you were doing, riding across country. I wouldn't do that myself.
I think that's quite normal. I think that would be normal. I thought everybody would do that. I thought everybody would say, what are you doing out here, you stupid woman? Get back home. Eventually, faith and trust had to grow out of this situation. It had to. I realized that if I just stopped the anxiety, if I just stayed present with the moment, that I would be provided for every single night. And you know what? I am. I did discover, who I was out there and what the potential was for me out there. I did discover that. I discovered who I actually was out there for the first time in my entire life.
Bernice made it to her sister's place in Edgewood, New Mexico. By that time, she and Pride were deeply bonded. She tried to convince the breeder to let her buy him, but he refused. Bernice lost Pride, but had found an even greater love.
I married my life. For the first time, I married my life, and I love it. I love long riding. It's who I am. It fills my soul. There's no choice anymore. I can't go back. I can't go back and be the way I once was. Leaving everything we think is necessary in life and having only the raw essentials. And in that, there you are. There you really are. And it was that, I think, that I had discovered. In the absence of all the stuff we surround ourselves, we find who we are. At that point in my riding, I really didn't understand all of this. I just knew I could not go back. I needed more of this. I started looking through ads in the paper because I didn't have any money, and I found 8-year-old gray thoroughbred, sweet disposition, 16.2. That's really all it said, not much. $800. Okay, $800. Okay, all right. I still didn't have $800, but a girlfriend of mine and I drove to see this horse. Now, this was over on the coast, and it was pouring down rain. You know how it torrential rains over there. And we drove 2 hours to see this horse, and it was a horse trader that had it. And he had several horses in this horrible situation, mud up to their knees, and she was standing curled over, you know how they curl over and butt to the wind and shaking. He put a saddle on her. He got on her, rode her, came back. I said, I'll take her. I mean, how could I say no to this horse? And she's just exquisite, just exquisite, but very thin, and you could tell this horse was somewhat terrified. I went home, and I called one of my sisters, and they lent me some money, and I brought her home, and she would do that. The rocking, they rock back and forth and then spin in circles, rock back and forth and spin in circles. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I lay across her back gently, and she sinks to the floor. She just goes all the way down to the floor. And I jump back up, and I go, oh my God. This is why they sold her to me. She's got back problems. So I go back and I, kind of massage her again and lay down across her again on the other side, and she falls down to the ground. I go reeling back, and I squat down and cry. I mean, here I've got this horse that I can't even get on. I think, okay, I've got to make her stronger. There's no money. There's no money to call a vet or have x-rays or anything. So I'm going to have to, figure this out. Finally, one day, I lay across, and I'm crying. And I'm going, you've got to get up. You've got to try. And she stands up. She got up, and she got stronger, and she got stronger. We simply climbed mountains. And she just had this raw energy of go, go, go. And I did a 5,000-mile ride with that girl like that. You have this kind of rapport with a horse that's so damaged like that. She had issues that, were permanently scarred into this horse's soul. She wasn't going to get over this stuff, ever, ever. She was always going to have this kind of high, strong nervousness. She loved that forward motion, loved it, loved it, loved it. But she wasn't suited for heavy packs. which, forced me to walk a lot. I walked most of that 5,000-mile ride. I bet I walked three-quarters of that ride. There's very few people that would even want a horse like that, that would be capable of taking a horse on like that. She was a lesson in devotion. It was all about devotion. How devoted was I going to be to this horse to make her stay with me? The second year I was out, I had a newspaper reporter come out and do a story on me, and she said, "How long do you think you're going to do this?" And I said, "I'm going to ride as long as it takes to change me completely." And I think the most profound change has been my empathy for the human struggle. I think I've found a tenderness or a kindness in myself that I don't think I once had. I had nothing. If I had $5 in my pocket, I kept going. I lived on tuna fish and cream cheese and tortillas, cheapest food I could buy. But after that first year, I had no more money, and I went back out. And I had, I think, $15 in my pocket, and I was going to ride now another 4,000 miles. Then I started riding into towns, and I'd go to senior centers, would do a talk for them, and they'd feed me. I could play piano. I played piano and I gave them a talk. My horses would be tied up outside. I just had so little as far as supplies or money, and so when I rode into these people's homes that they themselves were poor, their generosity meant all that much more, that they would move over and let me sleep with their kids. That was the tribal lands west of Albuquerque, New Mexico, but it was the Granada Negro family that took me in. And I'd gotten caught in a snowstorm, and the snowstorm dumped 7 or 8 inches of snow, and it was a blizzard condition for days and days. I couldn't go anywhere. I went to one of the tribal council meetings, and I was introduced there, and they were speaking Navajo. And they said that you were out looking for a husband, but that they thought that I'd be kind of hard to keep home. I just kept at it, and I realized every night, I made it through the night, and I made it through the day, and I'm not dead. I didn't starve to death, and that I didn't need so much. A lot of times it's just we think we need so much, and we don't need that much. I could probably keep going like this, but I knew Claire couldn't. She had to have a horse to ride. I went out looking for a horse that my dog could ride. And I found Essie Pearl. She was a fjord, a Norwegian fjord. You felt like you were walking with the horses that were drawn in the caves. Claire knew how to ride. She knew how to ride from a puppy. Claire could jump on to her back, no problem. To have a horse stand for a dog to jump onto its back is like, oh. Like I use my right hand, she always used her right paw. She would reach down and pat Essie on the neck, and Essie would stop. By that time, they were very good friends. They were good buddies. And then, of course, when she started to ride, it was like having a star of the show. It was like she just fit that. She just fit it so well. And she had 4 right paws, so they looked like gloves. She learned to wave. She'd ride in this box, and she learned to wave, and she just diffused any kind of conflict. So adding a second horse, having Essie Pearl as my pack horse, added enormous luxury to my traveling. I had a tent, I had a stove, I had extra blankets, I had much more comfort. It was like having a cargo ship. Essie hated her, I'm sure because she was always in heat. Essie didn't like that. Essie was never in heat. Essie was kind of this big, kind of dumpy-looking fjord, with this big head, and here comes this fancy, dancy, thoroughbred, sleek and cool, and Essie was going to kill this horse.
Hello.
Hi, Madeline. This is Ren.
Well, what I remember is that I had met her through a friend of mine and had gotten to know her, and we'd been visiting, and I wanted to drop her off a book. And on my way into town, I stopped and dropped the book off, and she wasn't there, but everything was fine. You know, all the horses were fine. On my way back from town, I decided to stop again and just see if she was there. And when I got there, the one horse, Honor, had obviously had a, severe injury. So I called a friend of mine that had a trailer. She rushed over with the trailer. We took the horse into Austin Equine. I want to say that Bernice met us at Austin Equine. I think we finally got a hold of her, and they, did a radiographs on the horse and determined that the shoulder was broken, and it was not something that could be repaired. And so the horse, Honor was put down. It's just so hard when 1 minute they're fine and the next minute they're gone.
After the death of Honor, Bernice began the long walk home from Texas to Montana. Essie carried the tent and supplies. There was no room for Claire Dog's box, so Claire stayed in Texas with Bernice's sister.
And it was pretty much a basket case. I was just running on raw momentum. I had just lost Honor, and oh my God, that was some of the most awful times.
Hearing the news that Bernice had lost her riding horse, a Texas rancher offered her his retired roping horse, without disclosing why the horse had been retired. Thinking she had been the recipient of a generous gift, Bernice named the big paint Heart for Heart of Texas, and Claire Dog rejoined the long ride home.
Heart, poor Heart, gosh. Just wasn't put together right. His back didn't set into his hindquarters well. I had to make the decision either to stop riding or I'm going to ride on bareback because the saddle was chafing him. I also knew that if I did not keep going, he was never going to get stronger. I would continuously be stopping, and it was okay to ride. It's just that he couldn't have anything on his back as far as a saddle went. So it worked. I rode 300 miles bareback from Panhandle of Texas to Minnesota. I rode bareback. He fell down on me a number of times. And by the time I got up there, his back was sound, and he was good, and I got another saddle. It's like life. It's like it's come in. It's come in. It's there in your face. So, you have to want to embrace both. The discomfort and the comfort. You have to want all of it in life. The discipline of my mind. It's really easy to let it go off somewhere, like, in fear, or I'll never make it, or I can't do this, or, I'm so tired, it's so easy to let that mind just go, woo, carried off by the wind. I like that part of it. I like, facing something that just really puts me somewhere where I'm not very comfortable, and I don't go very often. It's the edge. It was 2008 that I met him. Went driving by and then stopped, and it was like, "Ah!" Okay, here comes something. Here comes something now. Now what? And you could tell he was a character. He's got all these, knives on, and he's got this big hat on, and round rim glasses, and full beard that never had been trimmed. And he introduced himself, and hey, I see you got a fjord. Yeah. And he brought out his old beat up, dirty thermos of coffee that had been in there all day long, black and thick. And then he brought out his white those vanilla cream cookies, those big long packages of vanilla cream cookies. And we sat there and ate these cookies and dunked them in. He'd hardly any tea, so we had dunk everything. And that's how spirit came into my life.
Hart and Essie taught young Spirit the skills and the mental composure required for life on the road. On a 2,000-mile practice ride through Canada, Hart demonstrated to Spirit what it meant to be Bernice's lead long-riding horse. And Spirit grew into the role she would soon be taking on. On their way home, Bernice could feel that Hart didn't have it in him to do any more long rides. So when she got to Montana, she left him with a friend there. And Hart did what all hearts eventually do. He stopped. Bernice doesn't like to talk about it, but she wonders if he died of a broken heart because she left him behind. Claire Dog had stayed with Hart. She was getting old, and Bernice didn't think she would be able to manage the next ride either. Claire died at age 16. It was just a few months before Bernice returned from her most epic long ride, 8,000 miles, coast to coast, and back again.
Well, I think that the image of horse and rider is an emblem of freedom. You know, it's self-reliance, independence, freedom, and it's not. It's something I have thought about so much, and about freedom and what we think freedom is, or how we go about getting freedom, because I'm not free, and I'm so dictated by the weather. You know, I'm not allowed to just go and do whatever I want. Is that freedom? To just go do whatever we want to do? Is that freedom? Just simply being human it inhibits our freedom. You know, we have to have food, have to have water, have to have shelter. Where are you going to get that? Well, that dictates. I can't just go off and ride across the desert in the summertime. I can't just ride across the mountains in the winter. I think freedom is an illusion. It's something we all think or at least a lot of people think they want. They have to have. But would they even recognize it if they had it? I think the only freedom that to me means anything is life without fear. That is the only thing that I would consider freedom. It may look like I have nothing, but I have everything I need. And in that knowing comes the absence of fear. It's knowing you've got everything. That's the absence of fear. That's the only reason I can explain why I'm not afraid, because I feel like I've got everything. One of the things about long riding that I had to overcome was letting go of the need to have everything controlled, having everything predictable, knowing where I was going to spend the night, where the water was going to come, who I was going to meet, what was around the corner. Everything I encountered was new. In that moment of unpredictability came this heightened sense of awareness. Having life have a newness to it keeps you in the awe of life and wanting to see what's around the corner, because I think so many times we don't. We get saturated in our plans, and we get caught up in our security, and then that person riding down the road looks really good. It looks like freedom riding by. The problem is you got to let go of all that security, all that stuff that we hold on to get to know what it means to be present and in the moment. I'm so attracted to the simplicity of life. I so want to be a part of it. I want to be out here in it. I can't stand sleeping with a roof over my head or driving in a car. I mean, it's like, I want to be part of this. I want wind in my face. I want to feel bugs. I want to feel cold. I want to feel hot. I want to feel life. I want to be part of it. People think that I'm on some destination, that I'm going to go someplace and then come back, and it's not that. It's not that at all. I'm already there. In the coming and the going, I'm already there.
Is it luck? Is it good fortune? Is it just happenstance? Seems to be just a little too often to be coincidence. Whenever I reach a dead end and didn't know where to turn, out of the blue, when least expected, could it